So I used to be Janey, the exercise hater, always complained about exercise, saw herself as an exercise hater. What? People actually like this stuff? So that was I'll use that as an example. So we have an identity and we can change our identities. And one of the greatest ways that you can do this is through identity-based habits. So identity-based habits are what we do because of who we need to become to reach a goal. If you want to be somebody that is a consistent exerciser or a regular movement or a power walker or whatever it is, and you're not that person now, just chuck yourself out the way for a minute and put all your focus on the person that is. You decide the identity that you want for yourself or the identity you need in order to reach a goal or make something happen. And then you need to step into that person's world. You need to step into their heads. What does the person that exercises every day or does movement snacks with Wendy, what goes on in their head? How do they talk about it? What do they think? What do they believe? What do they tell themselves? What do they bring to their attention? We step into their head and just get a piece of paper and write that down. Then we need to step into their day. So step into their day and think about what do they do and what do they not do? And we start to then borrow. What are they saying yes to? What are they saying no to?
If you struggle to motivate yourself to move more, or you've never liked the thought of exercising, but it's something you know you want to change, then today's episode might help you understand why you feel that way and give you some tools to start making changes in your life. Today's guest, Janey Holliday, is a mindset coach. Prior to her coaching business, she ran a very successful fitness business for many years. Ironically, she started this after being a self-confessed exercise hater. Janey helps you see the world differently and gives you the tools to make all important changes that can set you up for a better life, both today and in the future. So, Janey, we have known each other virtually known each other for a long time now. I've been using your coaching services for, I think it's about 4 years now. And what's interesting as a connection between us is that you used to run a movement business, a fitness business, before you became a mindset coach. And what I've always found intriguing and why I wanted to get you on here was because you're a self-confessed exercise hater. Right up until the point that you started to think about the idea of setting up your own business. So tell me a little bit more about why you find yourself as an exercise hater.
So I'm going to take you right back to the beginning. So I grew up in a family, my dad was a professional cyclist, so I did have a positive kind of message about exercising and passion for fitness. My mum hated exercise, still does. And I loved moving as a child. I didn't stop moving, but I didn't really like that structured type of exercise. I played netball at primary school. I hated that bit where you're going to be picked for rounders. That's the bit I hated because I wasn't very good at throwing balls. And when I went to secondary school, that's when I really started to hate it. And as I'm sure we're going to talk about on here, joining up the dots from where some of your blocks come from is really important when you're trying to create change. And I started secondary school in 1988 and it was communal showers. I mean, you were expected to, on the first week of term, take all your clothes off and go in these showers with these people you've just met, with these horrible kind of bullshit, strict PE teachers. And I also really remember being taken on a 4-mile cross-country run in the depths of November, and you're coming back with your lungs on fire, and I just really hated it. And my mum was quite happy to sign me off PE as I kind of progressed through secondary school. I was much more interested in drama and those kind of things. And I have a little joke amongst my friends, which is when I got to university, that as far as I got with exercise was the rowing club pub crawl in Freshers Week. That was basically it. And then I kind of graduated from university and I worked in London for the government, and I got a free discounted gym membership. And it was about the time, and this is really important to understand when we look at the programming of women with fitness, it was around the time, so we're looking at sort of 2000, 2001, where we had that kind of explosion of celebrity magazines. OK and Hello started coming out weekly. We could go on to Daily Mail or, the celebrity kind of gossip platform of choice on our computers at home. That was the first time we could really do that. And I clearly remember Jerry Halliwell.
Sorry, just to stop you there, not for me. I'm afraid it was all magazines at that point. But yeah, same era, but just slightly further on. Yes.
So I very clearly remember Jerry Halliwell at the Brit. She came out in that butterfly outfit, and she'd been doing the Atkins diet, and it was all around this, that first kind of real programming of women. I mean, we had it in the 80s and 90s with mums dieting and exercise and all those kind of things. But in my journey, that was when I was like, I want to be slim or skinny. I don't like exercise, and I love food. So I joined this gym, and I mean, I don't think they do this anymore, but I saw this male personal trainer, and he squeezed the fat with the calipers, at the back and under your
No.
arms. And then they kind of work it all out. And as a qualified personal trainer, I know exactly how to use that kind of as a tool, but I don't think they use it anymore. And this guy's like, oh, you need to lose, a stone and a half, and this is what you need to do, and gave me this really
And
boring kind of
and
fitness
you were
routine.
what age at this point? Like 20,
22,
early
23.
20s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoa.
So I sort of plodded along at this gym. I wanted to be fitter, I wanted to be slim, but I hated it. And I mean it, Wendy, I hated it. But I did
Yeah.
drag myself to it. And this story that I'm about to share changed my life. And I always say this, always be on the lookout for epiphanies that just come out of nowhere. And I was on the cross trainer. It was an early morning. I used to go before work. Gordon Brown and Mo Molam used to be in the gym at the same time. It was really funny. She used to swim actually. But I remember this woman, she came out of the studio and she said, everybody come into my class. She was teaching a step class, and I'd seen her do this every Tuesday, Thursday morning for as long as I've been there. Everybody come into my class. I'm hungover. I need everybody to come with me. Come on, off the trainer, off the treadmill. And she dragged all these people in, and I'm thinking, I don't really want to go. And oh my goodness, Wendy, that 45-minute changed my life. I still get quite emotional, get goosebumps thinking about that kind of real sliding doors moment, because she was hungover. I think she was actually still drunk. I was 23. She was, and I'm not condoning that, by the way, promoting that, by the way. She was in her 40s, so 20 years older than me. She wasn't in matching gym gear. And she played, I can still remember it, the Armand Van Helden, You Don't Even Know Me. I can still remember the routine, give me a step, I'll do the rocking horses. And in that 45 minutes, she was fun. She was engaging. Don't worry if you can't do the hard stuff. I'm not doing the hard stuff, And it was that moment, Wendy, where you realize environment is everything, and somebody encouraging you and somebody just giving you a different perspective, a different lens on what exercise can be like. And that was it. And I went twice a week for quite a few months, and I was, I just love it, and I'm still in touch with her. We contacted
Really?
after I set the fitness business up. She's in her 60s now. And then I changed jobs, and I actually worked at Fox Kids Europe for a while. And this again is a really important story about programming, because the CEO of Fox Kids, we had our office next to Holmes Place in Euston Road in London, and we all had a free gym membership, and the office closed down between 12 and 2. You were expected to
That's
exercise
brilliant.
between 12 and 1 or 1 and 2. Everybody went. The CEO would be there. He used to always say, like, I chose my university degrees around his, he was obsessed with surfing. But it was kind of an expectation that this was the best thing that you can do in order to do a really good job generally, like, if you're not going to exercise at lunchtime, you're not going to get through the afternoon. And so these planting the seeds of all of these things are so important, because that's quite rare, right?
That's very rare. And actually, it almost feels like quite a sort of a modern twist, a more recent, I should say, twist where, sort of well-being's in the spotlight, and how important it is for us to encourage our workers to be productive by giving them time. And yet, actually, I wonder, I don't have stats on it, but how many businesses even do offer certainly that amount of time. That's a huge amount of time. And that's absolutely brilliant that they would encourage it. I think a lot of businesses give gym memberships, but obviously that's not usually in your time of work. So yeah, that's very forward thinking, actually.
And it's also, Wendy, about the narrative that it's okay to take a lunch break. I mean,
I couldn't, and also particularly a lunch break that involves movement. I mean, I think a big problem is, take your lunch break, but it's got to be eating your sandwich at your desk whilst still sort of working it, or at least being available, rather than, get up, move, get out, get in the fresh air, all of these, far more important ingredients.
So all these sort of little seeds were being planted, and all these little epiphanies were happening around me. And I'm fairly impulsive, as you know, Wendy. And I took on another job. I moved somewhere else. And it was a wrong decision. And I have a saying, as you know, there's no such thing as a wrong decision. It's just a decision. And sometimes, and I genuinely think that this wrong decision led me to where I ended up, because within a few months, I quit my job, sold my flat, and decided to become an aerobics instructor. And everyone thought I'd gone mad, because this was the girl that used to hate exercise. And within a few months of qualifying, I was teaching 26 classes a week all across London. I was doing aqua, body pump, body step, aerobics. I then
Uh,
became an anti-postnatal trainer.
ha- Pardon?
Yeah.
How do you plan that number of classes around the number of classes, and how are they the hours in the day? Clearly, that was pre-children.
Yeah. But absolutely pre-children. But well, number one, I'd sold my flat, so I had to earn money. I had no
Yeah,
buffer, I had no family in the UK. I made this decision. I had to make it work, and I loved it. I loved it.
yeah.
It was like I completely changed identity. And I then did my personal training qualification. And I very clearly remember on the first day saying to the woman who trained me, who I'm still friends with now, I think we're going to do some work together next year. And I said, "Oh, I don't want to be I don't want to be a personal trainer. I'm only here because my boyfriend at the time was away every weekend, and I've got nothing else to do." And then within that first morning, where she talked about particularly women and healthy eating, and exercise on another level, and habits, and all that kind of stuff, I was like, right, I'm single-handedly going to take on Weight Watchers and transform the world of women and health and fitness. And then before long, my personal training practice were fully booked. This was in the boom days of the the early noughties. And I launched Fit for a Princess, and then I launched my outdoor boot camp. So it was for women of all ages and all abilities. And it was in an environment where you could thrive. It was judgment free. I trained my trainers to be able to deliver a class where we had a pregnant woman, a postnatal woman,
Yeah.
someone in their 70s, someone that was injured, someone that was super fit. Like that was kind of the model, if you like. And it was just such a special, special time. And it's really important, I think, to understand this, because this goes back to the environment aha moment I had in that step class. Um, because women didn't come just for the fitness and the results. That was like a byproduct of coming to have a good time. Like, we used to gossip while we trained. Like, it was just this really, really relaxed environment. If you want to wear your sweaty Betty matching gear, go for it. If you want to wear your husband's trackie, not a problem. If you've had 2 hours sleep, it doesn't matter. If you're hungover, just come and do something. And it's funny, you'll have heard me say this before. There's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothes and a bad attitude, which was, we ran our early morning boot camps all year round. I did 80% of my business revenue before 7:15 in the morning. Vogue did a write-up for us once, and we were called the Secret Smug Club. When London were asleep under their duvets in the depths of winter, there's like these girls out on the common with their pink leg warmers. And it was a really special time. And I think one point I want to make is, I think one of the reasons it was so special and so successful was because there's a term called modeling. I don't know if you're aware of this, but we're mostly inspired, particularly when we struggle with something, to be around or to be taught by somebody who's been through the same struggle as we have, but has got through the other side. So as people were coming to my class, I wasn't the person going, "Oh yeah, I've loved fitness all my life. I did this sport. I've got a sports
Yeah.
science degree," which many personal trainers. I was like, "I hate it." And actually, Wendy, to your point that you said at the beginning, I don't actually really love it now. I like being outside. I like being active. I like the way I feel afterwards. It keeps me mentally sane as a single mum of three and a mum of an autistic child. So the fitness for me is always the byproduct. And if you can
Yes.
provide that, it's a game changer, isn't it?
I think it's really interesting about this, the narrative of fitness. And I know that that was part of your business name, and the business that you had was very much of the moment about everyone's need to get fit. But it wasn't at that point, and is becoming, thankfully, more so now, much more about sort of fitness for life, as in functionally fit, and prepared for living the way we want to live for as long as we want to live, and realizing that that's a lot more nuanced than just getting our heart going and sort of jumping around a lot. And certainly you and I both know at certain life stage as well, that can actually be quite detrimental to be, focusing on cardio. But at the time, it was all about the best way for us. And sadly, it was about losing weight and looking a certain way, was by getting that heart going and doing the max that we absolutely could. And thankfully, that narrative has changed quite a lot, but it's still ingrained, isn't it? And I think one of the most important things that certainly I, through working with you and your coaching and so on, is questioning what we really feel about things, which is uncovering those beliefs, which you and I have talked for a long time about, is one of the hardest things, because it's all about that programming. You were talking about this whole sort of, what was going on in the media, and also, what's going on with your friends and so on. And actually, your light bulb moment in that gym came not really because of the exercise, but because of the fun, the joy, the happiness, combined with the fact that your body was moving. And so therefore you naturally felt elevated because all those lovely hormones are
Yep.
racing around because you're doing something. But also it was the group, the environment, and the fact that someone gave you permission
Yep.
to just do what you were feeling was right for your body that day, rather than all the shoulds of, you should be on the treadmill for 20 minutes, you should be lifting this level of weight for this long, this many reps, blah blah blah, all the sort of the shoulds that the world places on us. And in fact, you'll talk about this more in a second, but those sort of beliefs, those things that we carry, actually leaning into, how they're affecting us now, is really important. And obviously you talked as well about, your childhood experience of PE and so on. And everyone in the world sort of knows that whole thing of being picked for a team and being the last one to be picked because you weren't quite, and if you weren't the sporty one. And the amount of people that say to me, oh yeah, I wasn't really a sporty child. But what about a child that just moved, that played? Bet you played. I bet you played for years on end,
Yep.
constantly moving, running, climbing, having fun. As innately, we all love to move because of those childhood years. And yeah,
Mhm.
because of the whole school thing, we package it up as sporty or not, and then we carry that with us.
Yeah, I mean, this is. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. It's massively looking about programming, and I think we actually need to go back to the programming of our parents, particularly mothers, I think. So when we look at the 80s, it was all about the kind of aerobics kind of thing, wasn't it? And then in the 90s, it was more like the step, and then the kind of strength stuff came in. And then in the noughties, it was like body pump everywhere. The gyms
Les
popped
Mills.
up. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
also, and it was gym, and personal training was kind of the thing. And so when we look at what was our kind of normal, what the media was covering, there's that celebrity personal trainer, I think it was Matt Roberts. He was everywhere in the kind of the noughties and around the sort of, well, just before the turn of the century. And the supermodels had a personal trainer. So it's what's going in and what's forming those beliefs and giving us our perspective on what we should do, what we need to do. And actually, what I've learned over the last, I mean, 24 years ago, nearly, it was in February, I became an aerobics instructor, is how we have to do what works for us. And that actually takes quite a lot of courage to take a step
yeah,
back and go, actually, what's good for me? Some people are social exercisers, some people are solo exercisers, some people need to be outside, some people would like to be with big music, some people just naturally thrive on longer exercises, some people actually prefer small ones. And so I always say this, it's about ripping up the rule book. Forget everything you know, forget everything you saw, and then
yeah,
ask yourself from now on, what can I do that's going to keep me moving? And most importantly, what's going to help make getting to the movement more
yeah,
enticing and more enjoyable? Because that looks wildly different for everybody. And also, as we know, in the 80s and the 90s, and even in the sort of noughties as well, you know, hour-long workouts were like, that was what you did. It's an hour, 60 minutes. I mean, who decided that we needed to do an hour? And I,
It's a bit like the whole 10,000 steps. It's just one of those things that gets into the world, doesn't it? And I do think, having thought about it a lot, I think that the whole hour class, it was very much just because it literally does fit nicely within, everyone's going to remember when the class is starting
yeah.
and finish, I mean, it's just literally that, nothing else. And yet you could be completely exhausted by the end, to the point that you are so spent that it's challenging your immune system,
Mhm.
and you're walking away thinking, oh, it's, later on in the day, let's say if it's been early, I'm having a massive 4 o'clock crash. That means I'm not fit enough, or that means that I'm not sort of capable, or whatever. And yet it's not about that. It's because you couldn't stop when it was right for you to stop because of the sort of forced class environment.
Yeah, and I think we saw, like, I remember at Fit for a Princess when kind of the 30-minute HIIT workouts came in. It was like, oh, everyone was like, oh, we don't need to do an hour anymore. We need to do half an hour. And everyone was like, I don't want to do half an hour. I actually want to do an hour. And part of that is the programming, but also part of it is we have to remember, going back to our kind of passion, is that it's not all about effectiveness. So for some people, an hour's workout, if it's the right level for them, let's say Fit for a Princess, you could pick your level, you know, in a lovely stretch at the end. Sometimes an hour is actually a nice thing for you. So it takes you out of your world for an hour. But for other people, that can be the biggest block to actually exercising consistently, because you don't have an hour. And of course, we need, you know, shower afterwards and time to get to and from your workout. And then we're looking at an hour and a half out of your day. So again, I think it comes back to all of the things that you teach and talk about. And it's about that for many people, the challenging the narrative, the bite-sized chunks, literally trying to undo and forget everything that you saw and were taught, because it's all gone in subconsciously. This is what a lot of people don't realize. You know, we're all driven by this unconscious programming that's gone in under the conscious threshold, and then it's like, oh, why do I feel like this? It's because underneath there's all of this, you know, decades of programming.
But it's also because the World Health Organization came out with the stat of 75 minutes of vigorous, or 150 moderate intensity a week. And, as we discuss a lot, the world becomes quite sort of binary, where it's like, have you done your specific number of exercise minutes per week, or have you not, if you see what I mean? And therefore, if I have, then that's okay, because I've ticked the box. And the problem is that then that actually restricts us, because we could actually be doing less, because we're like, well, we've done it now. And it's also not even about that, because the focus was on purely on exercise. We forgot about the merits and the huge importance of moving regularly. As you know, I talk about a lot, and like you were just saying, the sort of mini movement chunks, where when we are sedentary for a lot longer, it then becomes a real issue for us to sort of get out of that pattern. And therefore, exercise ends up feeling much further away and much more out of reach. And so I don't actually, if you sort of follow my stuff and so on, I actually don't talk about the word exercise very much. And when I'm talking about specific movements, I talk about movements rather than exercise, with real intention, because I think sadly, exercise has become a really heavily loaded term. And that is a really sad thing, because the point of the WHO putting out those really, scientific guidelines was to get us all moving more. And the reality is, it hasn't changed that much in that time. They've only now, I think it was about 4 years ago, they added in to the guidelines the importance of breaking up sedentarism. So actually the importance of moving more. And there's starting to be more and more studies about the importance of that.
Mm.
But I think, in a way, sadly, that's big part of the reason that everyone was really good about going, right, okay, if that's what we're going to do, how can we cram it in to make sure we've got just the right amount?
Mm.
Tick, done, and left. And everything has just been, a ripple from there. And I think we need to backtrack to that and find those reasons why, and remove those barriers that have, I think, potentially got a lot higher than they were before even.
Wow, you said loads of things there. But yeah, I mean, this is so important. I mean, I think, look, number one, you've touched on something really, really important, which is language, first of all. So
Yeah.
what the language that you use about certain things will have a different feeling in your body, expansive or contractive. So exercise for some people, or going to your workout, for example, can
And
really
gym,
shut you down. And gym,
even just the word gym.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so language is such a big part of the mindset and the attitude. So just sometimes changing that up. And I think we know this, Wendy. All advice and all scientific research can be changed further down the line. We get new information. So we have to be, this again is why we've got to be really careful. Like, that we're not these black sheep following all these guidelines. Decided by who? Have you stepped into my world? Like, I'm a 47-year-old with 3 kids by myself. I haven't had a full night's sleep in 8.5 years because my daughter doesn't sleep, who's autistic. So, I'm not, but I'm consistent with moving, but I don't do the guidelines, so to speak. And I ran a fitness business for 16 years. So it's understanding all of those kinds of things. But also, I know I shared this story with you beforehand, but when I was training to be a personal trainer pre-social media, there was something called PT on the Net, where you get all your articles and you'd learn all the latest research. And it was a fantastic article called Jane of the Gym versus Jane of the Jungle. And it's exactly like your stuff, which is, and as you know, I did this course this year for my clients called Overwhelm No More. And the call where most people got the biggest aha moment was the live like grandma call. I mean, our grandmas that lived till in their 90s or 80s, they didn't go to the gym and do all these things. They were active all of the time. So we have to look at, and also what we have to do, particularly with busy people, and especially with busy women who are juggling kids and work and all the rest of it, is sometimes exercise can actually become a stress on the body. So trying to motivate yourself. And if you've not got I always say this, if you haven't got, it's not about not having the motivation. It's not about not having the time. Sometimes you don't have the regulation to do it. You've got nothing left in your tank physically, cognitively, emotionally, because you're dealing with a lot. And then what happens is the narrative comes in, oh, I'm this terrible person because I can't motivate myself to do these things that the WHO are asking me to do. So then you do nothing. And this feeds into the biggest unhelpful belief I have seen in my journey, both in the health and fitness industry and as a life coach and mindset coach and business coach, is the all or nothing mindset. And if it's okay, can I just spend a couple of minutes just really talking about this, because this is essential for people to understand. So the all or nothing mindset is basically, I've got to do everything at 100%. It's got to be perfect. It's got to be done by the guidelines, or however you're seeing it, or it's not worth doing at all. And it's cognitive distortion. It's very fixed, rigid thinking. It actually comes from programming, typically from when we were growing up. You get a gold star for getting 10 out of 10. You don't get a gold star for like putting your PE kit on the peg, every day for 300 days of the year at school. We are rewarded for the top stuff. So that's partly where that comes in. And there's the on wagon, off wagon, if you're drinking or not drinking. That's kind of where that term comes from. Right. But what we have to understand is there is the magic of something in the middle of all or nothing. But a lot of people are searching for the all. They're looking, and what's crucial in this, Wendy, is that when you start talking yourself into that you are going to do the all, get a dopamine hit. Oh, yes, you feel good because you're telling yourself you're going to do it. But actually, when it comes to doing it, it's either unrealistic, or you start it, or you haven't really thought about, have I got the time? Am I doing this at the right time? I mean, all of these things are so important. I know we'll come on to how to make changes in a second. But if you have got the all or nothing belief and mindset, you are going to be stuck striving for perfection, the 100% club, doing things so well or not at all, and you are going to miss.
I love that, the 100% club. That's great. Tell me how many people are in the 100% club? None.
Well, precisely.
None.
And actually, as you know, I just ran this consistency workshop, and I said to them, the number one thing I want you to take away from today is I don't want you to aim for being consistent anymore. I want you to aim for being inconsistent, and that's going to help you be consistent, because consistency isn't daily. It isn't 100%.
Yes.
It's doing something regularly. Yes, it involves some positive discipline sometimes. Yes, it involves a bit of commitment. But the problem is everyone's looking for these big, bold sort of, and we've got in this modern world, Wendy, the impact of dopamine, there's
Mm.
shiny object syndrome, there's new that, and also what's crucial to understand about the all or nothing mindset is extremes sell. I used to have a column in the Daily Mail
Yeah.
back in 2004. I've written hundreds of articles over the last 20 years. And no journalist or editor has ever come to me and said, "If you've got a nice story about consistency, somebody, just doing a little bit." No, they want the 4 stone weight loss in 6 months. They want the,
Yes.
couch to marathon runner in 12 years. Extremes sell, and that's part of the programming. So what I want everyone to do is remember, and this is also another really important point, most people overestimate what they can do in a week and a month, and they underestimate what they can do in a year.
Absolutely.
So this is why we've got to move away from being the horse bolting out the stable door. Having said that, we want to also make things easy for our brain. So if we go back to my Fit for a Princess days, we used to run these 2-week boot camps. We used to come Monday to Saturday, have a rest, Sunday then we do another week. And actually, a lot of people said that locking into that routine was really helpful, because there was no, am I going today? Am I not going today? So our
Yeah.
brain likes patterns. It
But
likes,
but that was for a short chunk of time. So
yes,
because you knew how long it was, it was easier to commit,
yeah.
presumably.
Yeah. And it really helped people, and then they would then feel the benefits, and then they might do another one, or they take a break, and it just, so sometimes the concept of boot camp, as in, quite intense for a short period of time, can be a good thing, but again, not for everybody. And I think the other thing that's really important to knock on the head is that I see this all of the time, and I'm sure you do as well, and you will have had this belief too, that you have to run to be fit, right? And that cardio is like the thing that you need to do. And it's nonsense. I hate running. I hated running when I was a personal trainer. I mean, if someone paid me 60 quid an hour to take them for a run for an hour, I'd do it. But I hated it. I didn't want, that was my job. But I would never run. I don't mind doing a little bit of sprint running. Well, not in the last few years. But I really like to power walk. And people, I don't understand why people don't love power walking. I mean, okay, it's not for everybody, but it's easy. It's free. I mean, it's just there at our fingertips. But power walking, well, that's not an extreme. We weren't taught the benefits of power walking in the 80s, 90s, and noughties, right? I have a lovely client who says, "I've got a real block about power walking because I think you need to be walking a dog to walk." Like, she feels like there has to.
Oh,
It's so incredible how we create these stories about things. So
yeah.
I think what we have to do is really ask people to look at, what are your blocks? Are you trying to force yourself to do the 100% club, the running, the hour-long workout, the all? That you have to look the part. For some people, looking the part is the greatest thing that they can do to help them get out the door, but you
Yeah.
don't have to have it. So it's tapping in. What's going to help me? What's going to inspire me? And stop looking at what everybody else is doing. I mean, by all means, get ideas and inspiration, but stop looking at what other people are doing and find out what works for you and challenge it all.
But how do you, given that we've got all this programming, given that we've got all this messaging, given that we've got all this social pressure, and yes, try not to compare, but of course it creeps in. What tips would you give to people to who think, yeah, this actually makes a lot of sense to me, and I'd love to delve a bit deeper to find out what is driving me in the mode of keeping fit, being healthy, and movement in my life? What advice would you give people to try and find out what those beliefs are?
So a couple of key things, as we've done so far today, we've started to join the dots up. What happened before that got me to here? So there's something that we use in mindset coaching. It's called the thoughts, feelings, behavior triangle. So the thoughts, or the beliefs that we have, mean that we feel a certain way, and how we feel is how we then act. So it's looking at, if I have got a block to something, or if and one of the greatest ways to understand this is to ask yourself, what is it that you want to do? And then ask yourself, what's the hidden perceived threat of what's underneath it? So it could be, this is going to be difficult, this is going to be painful, I'm no good. Like, just see what's underneath it, and just notice that any thoughts that you have, or any beliefs that you hold, are just thoughts and just beliefs, and they can be changed. you and I are perfect examples. I don't like using the word perfect, great examples of how you can change your beliefs. So I always say with beliefs, there are a few ways that you change them. Number one is you have an epiphany. So the step class is an example of an epiphany. Sometimes somebody will say something to you in a certain way. You might have
Yeah,
heard it said 100 times before by other people or even by the same
absolutely.
person, but they'll say something in a certain way.
And you always talk about that as the light bulb moment.
Mhm.
And it really is, because you literally have flicked that switch of awareness where everything lands and makes sense to you for the first time, where before it didn't apply to you and it didn't really make sense. And then all of
Mhm.
a sudden, with that flick of the switch, the light bulb goes
Yep.
on, and you then see the world differently. Your
Yep.
lens on the world changes. And yeah, God, they're valuable.
So they're great, but they're
But they're rare
often they
sometimes.
yeah, and they often come from other people, which is great, but sometimes we need to go within. So then one thing that I want everyone to understand is your subconscious mind that holds all these beliefs and the programming that you've picked up. Its job is to help you survive. So its job is to help you take you towards pleasure and safety and take you away from pain and danger. So when we look at that in itself, often we have unconscious sabotage or unconscious fears around certain things. So it's really important sometimes to understand that we have to some ways trick our minds to understand that not doing something, right, is actually more dangerous to us than doing something. So humans are most motivated by immediacy. So first of all, if you haven't been able to motivate yourself to exercise or move or eat healthily or whatever you're trying to do in your life, just understand that from a survival perspective, your brain is most motivated by immediacy. When you're faced with a tiger, you'll run out the way. Often, client of mine, a husband had a heart attack. Suddenly, he will actually start taking his exercise and eating and stress levels more seriously because he nearly died. That's when the power is. So, what we have to try and do is trick our brain into, in some ways, trying to see what we need to do as immediate. And this is where you can start doing things like tapping into the future you, which I'll talk about in a second. But sometimes we have to work really hard to change a belief. Like I've changed a lot of beliefs over the last kind of 20 years, and that's come from I don't want this belief anymore. I know I've got this belief. This is
Yeah,
causing a block, and I need to change this. And it's going to take me time and it's going to take
exactly.
dedication.
And
It's not going to
as you
happen
said
overnight.
before, it's not going to happen overnight. Exactly. And it's a work in progress, or
Mm-hmm.
journey, as people like to say, that that you will see progress as long as you monitor that progress as well. As long as you are aware of how that is impacting you. And is it making, if you're feeling change, how does that change feel within you?
And we live in a quick fix culture.
We do.
And we want
All the
results like
hacks.
this. We want it now. We want
Yeah.
it now, and we're not prepared to wait because there's not a lot of dopamine when you're waiting and being patient. That comes back to the all or nothing mindset. So sometimes we have to work hard. But one of the greatest things that I'd like to share with everyone today is about looking at your identity. So, your identity, if I put very simply, is who we are, what we do, how we see ourselves, and what we're known for. So, I used to be Janey, the exercise hater, always complained about exercise, saw herself as an exercise hater. What? People actually like this stuff? Like, so that was like, I'll use that as an example. Um, so we have an identity and we can change our identities. And one of the greatest ways that you can do this is through identity based habits. So, identity based habits are what we do because of who we are, or what we do because of or who we need to become to reach a goal. So and this is such a great tool, if you want to be somebody that is a consistent exerciser or a regular movement or a power walker or whatever it is, and you're not that person now, just chuck yourself out the way for a minute and put all your focus on the person that is. And what you need to do, so you decide the identity that you want for yourself or the identity you need in order to reach a goal or make something happen. And then you need to step into that person's world. You need to step into their heads. What does the person that exercises every day, or does movement snacks with Wendy, or exercises outside, or goes for a run in the morning, or walk, even better. If you love running, great, do it. But you don't need what goes on in their head. How do they talk about it? What do they think? What do they believe? What do they tell themselves? What do they bring to their attention? We step into their head and just get a piece of paper and write that down. Then we need to step into their day. So step into their day and think about, what do they do and what do they not do um, throughout their entire day or their entire week. When they wake up, what are they saying yes to? What are they saying no to? You'll have heard me say a million times, Wendy, when you say yes to something, you're indirectly saying no to something else. So we're all made up of our habits, of what we do and what we don't do. So what does that person do? And we start to then borrow their beliefs, their thinking, the way they talk about things. You've got to be really careful that what you tell yourself doesn't become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I haven't got any time. I hate exercise. The
Yeah.
person that is consistent with whatever, or doing it, or has become that person, doesn't say things like that. Oh, I'm tight for time. I'm going to find some time. So we've got to be really, really careful that we really shift that identity and that focus from the thinking and the actions of that person. But then what we need to do is we need to start doing what they do. And what people do, Wendy, is they go, I'm this person, there's that person, and I want to go from A to Z in a million miles an hour, right? So you're trying to jump all or nothing again, A to Z. And what you need to do is you need to do identity shifting. So a really good exercise is, if you get a piece of paper and you draw a little circle in the middle, and then you draw a little circle around it, and a circle around that, and a circle around that, and a circle around that, etc. So on the outside, we'd have all of the thinking and the habits and the behaviors of the person that does whatever it is that you want to do. And there's you in the middle. And instead of trying to jump to there, we look at what's the next best thing. And what's the next best thing? Or you go the other way. Where can I start? So it's really looking at those kind of things. And you'll have heard me just say this as we've been talking. I am the person that. That's where we need to go. Because when you have the identity of that person, you're becoming somebody else. I'm the person that sets their alarm, gets their gym kit out the night before. I mean, these are all things I do. I go power walking in the morning and I'm busy, but I'm the person that does this for my mental health, actually, not for anything, not for fitness. I mean, as a byproduct. So I am the person that does this every morning, or most mornings. And therefore, I'm the person that puts my gym gear out the night before. I am the person that has my playlist. I am the person that communicates to my family that this is what I do. So we step into that, if that makes sense. And it's about shifting your identity. Sometimes, as I did, I really went from naught to teaching 26 classes a week in a relatively short period of time. But it wasn't overnight. There were steps. So there's a really great tool as well, Wendy, where if you imagine where you want to be, or where you're going to be, and then you work backwards. So what was the first thing I did? And this is where consistency is really important, because we want to start grounding, one thing at a time, so it becomes automatic. So the identity shifting is really, really important.
Yeah, that's really useful.
And habits.
You said 3. So epiphany.
Oh, sorry. Yes. So epiphany, working hard to change it. So that's where you would do a lot of work. Yeah. You'd probably come and work with someone like me, or you really dig into, this is the belief I have. This isn't serving me anymore. What belief do I want? What do I need to let go of? What do I need to work through? And you start forming that new belief. Things like affirmations can be really, really important as well. And then we have the identity shifting. But ultimately, what we're wanting to do is build habits.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't know this, but the way we need to build habits is to make them easy, attractive, visible, and satisfying. And actually, when we're wanting to move away from them, we do the opposite: difficult, unattractive, invisible, unsatisfying. There's a brilliant book, James Clear, Atomic Habits. It's a very popular book. He calls it obvious rather than easy. But it's looking at, if you imagine, when we're wanting to do something new, we're wanting to create neural pathways.
Yeah.
And those neural pathways all start out very small, like that dirt track. And the more we do them, the stronger they get, and then they end up kind of being the motorway. That's the analogy. Every single habit that we have, and every single belief that we have, started as that little pathway. So when we're starting to build new habits, our brain likes easy things. It
Yeah.
likes it to be easy. It likes to be automatic. This goes back to my boot camp example. Sometimes it's easier to go every day because there's no thinking. Plus, Wendy, in the modern world that we live in, how many distractions do we have? How much information are we taking in each day? Our poor brains are on their knees because we've got this information overload. So keep asking yourself, how can I make it easy? Sometimes that's visual tools. Sometimes that's a vision board for some people who like that kind of thing. Other people, it's actually really clear instructions and procedures.
And
This is
and
what
I
I'm going to do.
And I often talk about associations. So linking doing one thing with something else, because we already are formed with lots of habitual things that we do in our day. Some of them great, some of them not so great, but a lot that we just have to do. And actually linking one thing to something that you're doing already makes it so much easier to start to make incremental change. It's also easier for your brain to remember that you're wanting to do that, because often we just forget, quite frankly, because as you say, we're
Yep.
overloaded with a to-do list that seems to never get shorter. We used to be able to actually strike things off as we wrote them down, and I still certainly like to do that, because if it's digitally, then it's gone and you certainly don't feel that productivity. But when we attach doing something to something else, and that's part of the atomic habits thing as well, where it's about linking one thing to another, and then afterwards sort of being grateful that you've remembered to do the two things together. And from my world, noticing how your body and your mind feel after doing that thing. So if we're talking about movement and exercise, if it's just movement, then having done those 5 minutes of whatever while you're, I talk a lot obviously about folding the washing on the ground, because you've got to get down there, you've got to move there, you've got to get back up, you can make lots of different shapes on the floor. And you know what? The long term of that is that hopefully you'll always be able to get up off the ground, which can become elusive to many of us as we age. So if we have that habit now where we always think about ground when we're doing washing, then we're really, and we applaud ourselves for doing it, and we
Yeah.
lean into that feeling of, oh, I do feel better after doing that. And then at the end of the day, yeah, do you know what? I feel so much better because I did these snippets, regardless of whether you got the exercise in. How do your joints feel? How much less stiff are you? And linking it back to, okay, that was because I added in that little movement break whilst doing something else that was a boring chore that I have to do all the time, that I resent the time for. And therefore now I'm actually using that time really well. Win. I feel good. Win. And it all adds up. And that becomes a habit.
Definitely. So you're referring to the atomic habits. He calls it habit stacking, where you do
Habit
one thing
stacking.
and
I
something.
couldn't remember the
No,
term.
no, no. So it's really good. So this is exactly how, like, I have little, and I've trained myself because I'm not very good at this stuff naturally. And this is really important, Wendy. I shared this on my consistency workshop recently. We have to train ourselves to do new things,
Yes.
right? We don't just do it once and it's like, oh God, I didn't do it, therefore there's no point, all or nothing. You have to train yourself. So what you've just described there is like, so when I in the evening, I've got a few things I do as I'm just kind of getting everyone ready for bed. And one of those things is putting my exercise gear out, which is something that I now
Yes.
do. Now I don't need a checklist now, but I did when I was kind of, training myself to do it.
Yes, exactly. It becomes easier.
Yes, because the more you do it, the more the brain is building the pathways, the more it doesn't have to think this is what you do now. But habit stacking can also be in terms of grounding one habit first for a month, and then you bring in another one in the next month, and then there's another one. So habit trackers can be really, really useful. But I think as well, like, and what you just described there is the compound effect. Fantastic book by Darren Hardy, about how the trouble with the compound effect is no one's applauding you as you do something really boring 5,000 times, right? And it's exactly that. It goes back to the gold stars and the all or nothing. And like, it takes discipline to do these things. But it's always about, I love what you said about recognizing how you feel afterwards. It's two things: recognizing all small actions that you take towards something, because
Yes.
that's building your belief system that small can work. And this is really important for people to understand. One of the reasons we get pulled into the all or nothing mindset and extremes is we have evidence that they work. I mean, they don't work, but we have evidence that they do because they did for a short period of time. How many people have stuck with the small things, consistent, compound effect, boring habits or whatever it is over a long period of time. They haven't got there yet. So therefore they don't have the belief that it can work. So recognizing every small thing can be really important. And as you know, Wendy, most people, particularly women, only notice the things they don't do in their day rather than the things that they do. And again, we're looking for extremes. But also what you said about collecting that kind of feeling of how you feel afterwards. You know, I always say if you could bottle up that feeling of how you feel when you've done your
Mm.
exercise or you've done something that you were afraid of doing or you were procrastinating on and you get it done. And it's about recognizing those. But I also think that we have to take our future more seriously. And this is the problem. This is the stuff with blocks of people joining you and becoming more fit. It's because we're not in the immediate stage yet. So this is where we have to use our mindset to jump into the future. And if we could see ourselves as an 80-year-old or a 90-year-old, and they could give us a message, write us a letter and give us a message and pass it across the ages, what would they be screaming for us to do? And I ran a challenge a few years ago called, it was a food freedom challenge when I was doing more health stuff. And somebody said, oh God, I really want to be a kick-ass granny. And everyone was like, oh my God, I want to be a kick-ass granny. Great, what a lovely term. But wanting it isn't going to get you there. Getting excited and inspired by that concept isn't going to get you there. You know, inspiration is breathe life into, motivation is doing, consistency is doing what you need to do, as you know, all of the time or regularly, not daily, not 100%. So if you are wanting to, and this comes back to flippancy, it comes back to the immediacy that we talked about. The brain's not interested in that stuff unless you start telling it that if you don't act, you're going to then create problems. And so that,
Yeah.
and it can be a bit doom and gloom sometimes, right? But
It
it's
can. And from my personal experience, when I was in pain, I had this, it was a flash forward to the fact that, you know, I couldn't even climb over a stile on a walk without having to have my husband's hand, total fear of getting down off the stile, of sliding, of slipping, of falling, what that would flare up that would bring to my pain. And you know, and I'm not saying all 80-year-olds or 90-year-olds are immobile and in that place, but I felt like I was 80 when I was 40. I suddenly had this massive flash forward. So that's why I can now look back at that moment in time in my life, which clearly changed its trajectory entirely. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing the things I'm doing now. I don't know merrily what I would be doing, or the way I would think about my body movement. It could be entirely different. So for me, it was almost a shock to the system. But I also get quite a lot of messages from people, and it's probably of interest around this age, the sort of midlife stage where you're caring for older and younger.
yeah,
And you suddenly notice that your parents are, you know, very rapidly in some cases becoming more immobile, and their lives narrow because the things that they used to love doing just aren't open to them anymore through fear, through immobility. And they really, that scares you. And it almost, you know, those people message me kind of saying, I don't want that for me. I've got to think about that now. But it's so easy to avoid that, to pretend it's not happening. Although I do believe that with every decade, you become more aware of that. And there's so much talk about longevity, and sort of training for those later stages in life and understanding what that really is about. But yeah, it's how you, if those things haven't happened to you, it's how you choose to do that now, and sort of, and take the rug off your eyes, because it's
yeah,
easy to hide from that and say, oh, you know, I'll be fine. And yet, you know, if you're in a job that is forcing you to be sat for long hours and you are struggling to fit in movement or exercise around childcare, why it's important to just start putting yourself first, and, you know, in an entirely unselfish way. Because then when you are that kick-ass granny, you're exactly that. You know, if you're fortunate and have to have children and grandchildren, you know, you're doing that for your kids, to help them with the burden of looking after children, and you're doing it for your relationship with your grandkids, and to model with them how important it is that when you're a granny, you're kick ass, because you can go for it and you can climb and you can do anything you want to do. And how important that is. So yeah, for me, it's such a strong message for people that sadly it is easy to ignore because we're so living in the moment.
Oh, listen, Wendy, I mean, I hear you. I live in Sidmouth now, as you know. And when I first moved here, I was blown away by women in their 80s getting into the sea on a cold December morning without a wetsuit. And I was like, oh my God, this is like life dreams, life goals.
Yes.
Like just, and I think it's just recognizing, though, how easy it is for us to brush these things under the carpet. But it's actually also very easy for us. Sometimes it can be feel a bit difficult though, but we can really start thinking about who do I want to, this goes back to the identity. You know, what's the identity I want to have in my 80s, 90s, or
Yes.
whatever it is? What do I want to be doing? Well, if I'm in that person, what did I need to do beforehand to get there? And
Yeah.
that's the bit that you have to do. You know, you have to
And
really
actually,
think about that.
and like you were saying, with the all or nothing mindset, it doesn't mean you have to be a marathon runner, super athlete now. It just means you need to plan ahead to think, what are the things that I know become more tricky for people as they age? And how can I build them into my life using these habits right now? Where actually I get to the point where, thankfully, I almost don't even realize I'm doing it because it's become a habit and it's become my norm and it's become my non-negotiable, as you always say, so that um so that it's just daily life, and it's a great daily life that serves you for all your life, hopefully.
100, no, 100%. And the final thing I'd really like to say is just when we're looking at how we feel before doing something, how we feel as we start doing something, how we feel when we follow through, how we feel when we get there, and how we feel when it's automatic is very different. And so you beautifully described when you've got to the point where it's consistent and ingrained in you, there's no effort, there's no
No
there's no
effort.
motivation required. So I call it like the dopamine. We kind of have the dread before the doing, so the dopamine is low. We then get going, so the dopamine comes up. Oh yeah, this is really good, I'm doing this. And then we have to follow through, and that's when the dopamine goes, and that's when it's really easy to get sidelined. Then if we're working towards a goal, we get the dopamine lift again. But when we're looking at lifelong things, the goal is to actually have like what I call kind of like a bit of a dead feeling about it. There's no dopamine about what you do because you're just doing it. So it's
Yeah.
like cleaning your teeth in the morning. You don't need a gold star for cleaning your teeth. You just do it, right?
Mm.
So you don't think about it. It's just
You are
something that you
you
do.
are that person. You've now
Yes.
become that person that you were, that was the widest circle. You're there.
Yep, exactly. And that's the goal, for it to be easy. But in order for it to be easy, sometimes it can be hard getting there. And that's the mindset to have. This is going to be hard at the beginning, and then it's going to be easy. Or find things that you enjoy and do the happily doing mindset. You'll know that's something I talk about all the time. Can I just end with that quick point? So there's,
Yes,
if you,
please.
so this is really important. So when you're thinking about whatever it is, life goals, health goals, fitness goals, whatever it is, there's a consequence of you doing something or not doing. So either take the consequence, right? Don't do it and take the consequence. Either don't do it and delegate if that's possible. You can't do that with your health, obviously, or delegate something else to free you up to have some more time and energy for your health. Or you do it grumpily and stressfully and kind of, in that huffy puffy zone, that Kevin teenage attitude.
Victim,
Yeah,
victim.
the victim. Or you do it happily. And the happily doing mindset is a decision that you make which says, yeah, this might be a bit mundane, but you know what? I'm going to choose to do this happily because that's going to make it easier for me. It's going to feel better. And that's how you're going to get to the point where it becomes much easier to be consistent. And then it just becomes something that you do. So, happily doing mindset is absolutely a game changer for so many people.
That's brilliant. And it's so true because you can come to the end of a day, and if you've not been happily doing and you've been lost in negative spirals and so on, that adds up to really not feeling great at the end of the day. And yet, if you can just make that tiny, and it really is a tiny shift, to choose that positivity about how you've gone about your day and seeing things that you've done. And as you said, women are terrible at sort of and I'm sure many men, at going through their day, what I didn't achieve, all the things I thought I would achieve,
Mm.
I haven't. And actually, sometimes I've done this before just to prove to myself and perhaps my husband, a list of what I've done in that day, down to the finest detail of kind of take this thing over and put it in the bin. And the list is
No.
unbelievably long of what we do all achieve. And thankfully, a lot of that involves just moving and moving in predictable shapes. That's the way the body wants to become efficient at what it does anyway. And obviously my messaging is always try and add in variety, because that will benefit you as well. But it is incredible the amount we do, and therefore, applauding ourselves and happily doing that will be a much nicer end of the day.
100%,
Which is what we all
100%.
want.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, Wendy, the modern world is a really big block. How much time do we spend on our phones? Like I said earlier, information overload. And if we strip some of that back, that's also another way that we make things easier for ourselves. And I think a lot of us feel that we've got to be serious about our health and fitness. And yes, we need to take it seriously. But I also think the best thing that people can do is lighten the hell up, just have more fun.
Have fun. Do the kitchen disco. Exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah. Oh, Janey,
on the beach.
Yes, exactly. Just do what feels good in the moment. We're so good at sort of stopping ourselves doing things because that's not what you do or what you should do or be seen to do. And do you know what? If it makes you feel good, do it, because it gives permission to someone else to also do it.
Definitely, 100%.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on, Janey. You are such a wealth of information, and to me, such an inspiration. So tell the listeners where they can find you, because often these things sound brilliant in theory, but you find it hard to put it into practice, or to kind of connect the dots, as you said right at the beginning, of how you see yourself, how you see your life, and so on. And to get you from A to B, it's often a really great thing, not only to have someone like you who is lovely and objective and stands back and gives you little sort of exercises about how to see yourself, but also there's a community of people there that support you to do that get to know you, and that makes you realize that everyone is the same. Everyone.
Yeah.
So tell us how we can find you.
Well, first of all, I'm on Instagram, which is the Women's Mindset Coach. So come and visit me there, and you'll get lots of tips and daily inspiration. And I offer a variety of services, really, bite-sized programs that you can just download and access and listen to anytime. I've got the Women's Mindset Club and the Women's Mindset Business Club. I've got some really cool things for 2025 as well, which I can't say anything about just yet. And I also do one-to-one packages as well. So shall I share my website, or will that go on at the end?
It will as well, but go for it.
Yeah, it's just janeyholliday.com with 2 L's. So come and have a nosy around. And I think actually, Wendy, it's about recognizing that you don't have to struggle alone. It's okay to get help and to be inspired. I couldn't be where I am today without investing in myself. And I know you're the same. It's just, you don't have to sort everything out yourself, which is another issue in the modern world. So yeah, come out. My DMs are always open. Pop me an email. I've been changing the lives of women for nearly 24 years. So I do know my stuff. Just come and say hi. I'm always at the other end of a DM and an email.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed listening, and if you have, you can help by doing 3 things. First, press the follow button to tell podcast platforms you want to listen again. Second, please give the show a 5-star rating and leave a review about why you liked it. And third, I'd love you to share it with friends and family or on your socials, for which I'm truly thankful. Finally, if this podcast is making you want to start reclaiming your own movement, join me in the Reclaim Movement membership for classes, both live and by replay, and countless videos of mini movement breaks to add into your daily life, covering practical and fun, important natural movements. Visit reclaimmovement.co.uk/membership to get started with your 7-day free trial. See you for the next episode, and thank you so much for listening.